Hi, I'm so excited to welcome you back to the Coffee Man Podcast Season 2. I'm your host, Sasha Šestić, coffee entrepreneur, World Barista Champion, and also the coach of 5 WBC finalists, including the first female WBC champion, Agnieszka Rojewska, and also just recently, the first African WBC finalist, Martin Shabaya. In this season, I've sat down with extraordinary guests to talk everything coffee competitions. You will learn from my experiences and the mistakes as we share the valuable lessons we've learned on the way towards the world stage. If you've ever been intrigued by what happens before the world stage, where to start, and how to get there, you are in the right place. So wherever you are in the world, sit back with a cup of coffee, drive carefully, or even take us with you on your end run and enjoy conversation with us. Once again, welcome. Hello everyone, super excited for another episode of the Coffee Man Podcast, Season 2, Episode 6. We have a very close friend of mine, colleague that actually has been working with Honor Coffee with myself for the last 10 years. Joining us today, Hugh Kelly. And for a lot of you would know that Hugh Kelly obviously competed in recent barista competition, place number 3. He has been competing for the last 10 years, won Australian Barista Competition for 3 times, and currently he works as a head trainer of Honor Coffee. We're going to be digging deep into his story and the reasons why he has been competing for 10 years and how that has impacted what he does today as a coffee professional and also as a person. So, Kelly, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So, I'd love to start off with just, for a few minutes, understanding a little bit your life before coffee. Growing up and also, how you're originally from Sydney, how you ended up coming to Canberra.
So I grew up in Sydney. I had a nice upbringing, I guess. I had, loving parents who loved food and cooking and all this sort of things. And we were always very close as a family with that sort of sharing kind of style of living. And I went to school and I guess wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life when I was coming to the end of school. And it was one of those, I guess I'm going to go to university, next step. And what do I do? Or maybe business or commerce or something. I guess that's a safe sort of thing. But I guess, I decided that I wanted to move out of home at the end of school to sort of find myself in a way, or to sort of live that life as a, independent person and really work out what I wanted to do. So I went to ANU in Canberra. So I moved 3 hours down the highway and studied commerce, and I hated it. Absolutely hated it. I actually finished the degree, which is pretty cool, but I don't know. I found it was a lot of mind maps and a lot of like theories and not a whole lot of practical doing of things essentially. So when I was at university, I thought, maybe if I be a barista or something, I can earn some money on the side and fund my lifestyle and whatever. And then I met you very early on. So I was working.
What year was that?
I think it was 2009 or 2008 or one of those, far out, long time ago.
Yeah.
So I started working at a coffee cart on campus, outdoor, Teatro Vivaldi. And this was one of the first cafes that you would have supplied at Honor Coffee.
Yeah, probably top 5. At the time, Honor Coffee was one-man show. Sash was roaster, technician, cleaner, and etc. So but I loved spending time with the Teatro Vivaldi team. Obviously, there was you, Lex, Ross, and quite a few very passionate people. And I'm kind of interested because at the time the coffee or people we were supplying with the coffee was and I felt very tired and very maybe old school, but I've noticed something very different within your group. And you know, I remember visiting you guys more than possibly what I should, because I have a very good time with all of you. So you mentioned that you started working with coffee to make some money, but what I realized at the time, it was more than that. There was quite a bit of passion within your group. So what sparked that passion?
I guess as soon as I started on the bar, I mean, we had something that we wanted to build. So the coffee cart was doing maybe $200 a day originally. So not much coffee. And we were like, oh, you know, we can do more, and we can, you know, build this sort of community sort of thing there. And then more students started to come, and then we got really busy, and then we got too busy for a coffee cart, and we sort of negotiated a crazy salary of, if we make over $1,000, we get an extra dollar per hour or something ridiculous. And you know, a couple of years later, we were doing $3,000 a day or something. So we were getting paid like $52 an hour, and the boss is like, I need to renegotiate this. But yeah, we had an awesome group who were just really passionate about trying to do the best they did. And I found really early on, doing things with my hands behind a machine, like I just connected with it. And I loved the taste thing and trying to learn more about that. So it built very quickly.
Yeah, that's great. So barista competitions, how did that all start?
You asked me if I wanted to compete. There was the ACT state competition, and there wasn't enough people, I don't think. And you've come and gone, do you want to do barista competition? And I've just said yes without thinking, and no idea what it's about. And then came out to the roastery a few times to sort of try and learn some things, and I was completely unprepared. But I found it really interesting that how little I knew about coffee. And there was this huge learning curve there on the horizon. So
yeah, absolutely. Like I think that was 2008, right? 2009. I
think it was 2009 would have been first.
And 2009, back then we didn't have enough competitors in ACT, so I obviously asked you. I think that was Sam Corra's first ever competition as well. Angus Mackey competed, and then a few other people that we've kind of asked them and told them, hey, you have to compete. We need to come up with the numbers. But what I found interesting with you, because a lot of us were practicing, because Sam, Gus, at the time they all worked with Honor, and you worked in the cafe, you were studying full time. And I remember you came one day to the roastery to practice, like pretty casual, very relaxed, while each one of us are completely stressing, because following day was actually competition. And I was wondering, like, Kelly, are you prepared? Like, are you okay to compete? Thinking that competition is tomorrow, and you're clearly not prepared. You don't even have a capsule set up. You have nothing. And he goes, yeah, man, I've got this. Yeah, we have plenty of time. So, like, competition is tomorrow. Like, what does he mean, plenty of time? Then I said, competition is tomorrow. You know that, right? And then you go, tomorrow. To be honest, I believe many people would just say, I'm not ready. I can't do this. I'm not going to compete. Like, well, what did you do?
I went straight out to the cafe and I bought some cups. And I went to buy as many things as I needed to make it work. Just at the shopping, right? I went to Kmart in the middle of the night at Belconnen, because it's the only thing that's open. And I got the rest of the things that I needed and wrote my speech and learnt my speech that night, and then turned up the next day and competed in my first competition.
Yeah. And that's something that's impressive with you, even like when and we're gonna skip a little bit, in these late years when you were competing. I've always found impressive that you will change 40% of your speech in one day, and then following day it's as if you've known it for a while. So it's actually been or unbelievable advantage, I guess, that you can really memorize that so fast, and not necessarily memorize, but present it in a natural way.
And you worked out I could do that, and you pushed me to. I think what was it, Korea? I think I changed half my milk speech in Korea one day before heat, and it's like that's
that was great. So couple years later, you've competed again. You won your regional competition, and I believe that was following year, correct?
The following year. So
Following
second year I won the
second year,
regionals.
and then at the time we had already possibly guys competing for quite a few years, semi competing for earlier, and was not expected from Kelly to win. And if you want to take us through a little bit of that experience, Talana State, how it felt to prepare yourself for the regional, and also what happened in nationals.
Yeah, so that year I realized how underprepared I was, and I actually started to write like a list, even for prep time. Like I hadn't really practiced prep time. I'd done it once, I think. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to write a list for my prep time. So I had a list on my trolley, and it was like, okay, do this and then do this and do this. So I was like ticking these things off. And I didn't have a lot of coffee knowledge then, but I obviously had great support here as well. I mean, with what the guys could help with, and I just organized myself better than I did the year before. So I turned up and I was so much more confident because it was like, oh yeah, I got this. I'm so organized. And I think I was the only person that served full body espresso. It was a Talanara State washed coffee, and because I described it and didn't say what weight it was, I got tick for full body, and that pushed my tactile scores up, and it was super surprising. I was so happy.
Yeah, it was amazing. And then Australian Barista Competition, how did that feel?
Yeah.
First time on a big stage?
Then I prepared a bit more for that one, and then got on stage, and it was a train wreck. It was awful. First shot I did channeled. I went to wipe the drip tray, and the whole drip tray is like come out, and I caught it and put it back in, and by the signature drink I have this AeroPress, and I turn it over, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've got my setup with my frame, and I'm going to push the drink with the AeroPress through, and it caught the edge of the cone and all dripped out the side, and I only caught about a third of the drink in the actual serving vessel, and I didn't see it, and then it's like coming down onto the bench, and I'm pouring it into these cups, and there was like 2 drips in the last judge. And I think it was like Scotty Callahan or something, and I've gone like, thank you, sorry, and didn't serve the 4th drink, and that was bad. But I learnt how little control I really had that year, so that was massive motivation to go back and at least serve my 12 drinks, which is each year it was kind of, if I can only do this the next year kind of thing. That drove me to keep coming back.
So for you, obviously, like there's a pattern, because every year you clearly knew what was stopping you to go to next level, and you concentrate on that for 12 months till you to go to the next year. So I guess your sort of message is, what you're saying is, before we go forward, let's go backwards. So let's see where we at. Let's rebuild on that, and then we can see, okay, what's next for us. Next year for you, or following year for you, was very special. You won regional. No, actually, that's the year when I competed.
Yeah, you beat me. Yeah. I won the regional before because you weren't competing.
But I think you made a history for anyone from Canberra, because we had a lot of our baristas always going in the heats. So we usually have a region or state champion that goes to semi-finals directly, and then we have a few of the competitors that have opportunity to go to heats. So from heats, if you can win heats, you go to semi-finals, and then with the national state champions and some heat winners, you have opportunity to go to the finals, like to top 6. I remember that was a crazy drive.
Like 8 people competing.
So we had about 8 people from One Coffee. So we did not at that time need to encourage people to compete. Like, we managed to spread that energy that this is fun, and let's explore, let's learn together. And that year you made, I think, something that's special, that gave a lot of confidence to all of the other baristas that can go, wow, I can make this, and I can be in the finals. What was the main thing because you obviously have done something very differently than many of us in On Coffee, to help you together?
Yeah, I was tasting coffees like espressos, and generally, like across the board, I found them like astringent and just tight and not enjoyable on the palate. And I got a little Malconi Tanzania grinder and like clack, clack, clack to try and get it to dose me consistently and everything. And I ran very different like brew ratios to everyone else. I think I ran like 20 and 50 out. Sort of, this was at the very start of that sort of era of the filter coffee stuff. I think that was a year that Perga turned up with his EK and started doing these shots, but I kind of turned up with my Tanzania and my Honduras coffee, and it was beautiful coffee. But I just felt that it tasted better, and I was getting told a lot, and I was still very inexperienced, so it's understandable. Getting told a lot, oh, it doesn't have tactile, it's not, but I was like, oh, but it's smooth and it tastes good. And then I made it through to finals, and no one expected it. And I got like 4.5 for espresso that year. It was like lychees and white grapes. And
you served espresso in a gigantic mug. I've never seen anyone.
Ah, that's right. Yeah,
anyone in a competition stage serving espresso in a mug that was like 250 mils.
Yeah, I had a huge mug, had them cold off the machine, and then had them transfer into the mug and then to swirl, because I needed to bring it down in temperature. So you let those coffees cool. If you taste it off straight away, it's not that balanced, but then you give it a couple minutes and that coffee is just so much sweeter and so much smoother. And I was getting this thickness in that longer ratio that people weren't really expecting, and it scored really well. I didn't really know. I was just kind of going on gut instinct. I think this tastes better. And it seemed to work.
And you also made some significant changes with your milk-based coffee, because you served, one type of coffee in the first round, and then in the finals, completely different roast.
Yeah,
took a lot of risk.
Yeah, that was a coffee that came in. Was it 2 days before going down? And you roasted it for me, and we'd never seen this coffee before. It was like a natural process Honduras, huge berry, like big boozy berries and everything, and it was very unique flavor profile. And I used a very different coffee in the first round, and people were like, don't change, we don't know like whether it's that coffee the way it was. And I was like, nah, this coffee's better. I like this coffee. I'd never run it before, and I was grinding shots and running into the expo, finding people with a machine going, can I like make this? And first time I made that coffee, and I'm like, oh, so many berries. I just didn't describe it well in the finals, but I could have got a lot more out of that coffee. But it was just sort of throwing anything I could and changing a lot of things. And I was lucky I had John Gordon at the time, and we were all like, oh, John, he's the man. He's been in Worlds, and he was giving us a bit of support that year as well. And he was super surprised at the milk coffees. And so that gave me, I guess, more confidence to just throw caution to the wind and risk it.
Absolutely. Now that you mentioned you're bringing up, and I know your parents, and they love flavor, they love great tasty things, and obviously I feel that this was the very first year, 2014, that you were yourself. Like you kind of, even the things that as a young you loved, you cared, how you were brought up, you could explore the coffee and the taste and the flavor yourself. And I feel this is the year that Kelly found himself. But one of the kind of reasons why, when you get excited about a coffee, it's obviously when you taste something. Even now we were preparing for this podcast, and we go, should we make quick batch brew, or do we make something different? And I knew that you're gonna go back to office. No, I'm gonna actually make something really good. So yeah, great UG as well. But next year, 2015, another progress, another final routine for you as well. And obviously you supported me in Seattle. Prior to Seattle, left and right hand man, which for me was unbelievable. I always say, without the team, without you, Sam, John, Hide, Camilo, family, would not ever make it. But in the same time, even like you dedicated everything you have, to help me. But I kind of felt that when we finished that campaign and we kind of came back to Australia, you've also have been exposed to everything, and you've learned a lot. Big learning for you.
Yeah.
And in 2016, after 6 years of competing, you finally won Australian.
Yeah, that was pretty special, definitely. Yeah, that was it. That was a huge year. 2015 was a huge learning experience. I know Hide came and worked with you, and kind of like trying to watch and absorb what I could with just what he brought to the table. And I didn't understand anything about aging of coffee or degassing or any of this stuff. It was an Australian competition, my finals. My milk coffee was again the same situation. Coffees come in, we roasted it 3 days before competition, and it was like mango the first day, and then went to like blueberry muffin by the third day. And they only didn't score me a 6 because you served raspberry candy, the one routine before me, in finals. So they had that benchmark of that's crazy, and then mine's like just not quite raspberry candy, which is.
So what did you do to turn this coffee that one day was mango and following day was blueberry? Like,
I
talk a little bit more.
I think it was. I mean, I was leaving bags open and during the night, and it was just I don't want this coffee to close down and go really heavy and everything. And that's kind of the extent of what I knew about aging. And then I was just running the coffee quicker and quicker each day to try and keep the flavor open. And it seemed to work. On the final day, got 5s, 5.5s almost across the board for milk, which is like crazy. That was that first time. And then my espresso for the final day collapsed and went really thin and metallic and really bad. That was because I'd given it too much air. So I didn't know what I was doing. That destroyed my signature drink as well. They were getting like woody characteristics in the signature drink, and it just sort of collapsed everything else. So bit unfortunate, but I was happy I'd progressed further.
Nice. So let's go to 2016. You won Australian. You worked really hard for it. Remember, spending day and nights with you and super dedicated. You went to Dublin. You qualified in Dublin in the first round as number 3. Semi-final came, and what happened in semis?
Semi-finals is definitely where my mental game took over, and I was maybe a bit overwhelmed by the situation and the competition, and it's the bright lights and the big stands and all that sort of stuff. Even though Australian competition has great crowds and there is pressure there and everything, but I guess I mentally wasn't beyond that point at that time, and I wasn't in control of things. I wasn't kind of commanding backstage of like how this needs to work, how it needs to set up. Again, I wasn't in control of my coffees and my grinders, and really I wasn't ready to take full responsibility for everything on the stage. And I realized that after the competition, that I mentally was not in control. And that was obviously mentoring with you as well, and I learned I need to go back and show that I am in control of my grinders and of my station and of all my stuff. So the following year was like go back and just spend before work, after work, every day, lots of hours just controlling my grinders, making the decisions that I can run my shots right, and I can make my coffee taste good on the day. So for me, that was a huge learning. It was crushing at the time. It was, I ran my shots in semi-finals. I had 3 shots going. I'm trying to talk to judges, going, and look at those booklets and look at the cherries and everything. And there's a lot going on while I've got 3 handles of signature drink shots going. But I'm like, the shots are not coming out, and I'm there going, okay, like 3 handles are all not coming out, and it's like 20 seconds in, and it's like, okay, what's happened? I have no idea what's happening. Oh yeah, have a look at the cherries, and trying to interact with judges in a good way. And it was just like, okay, like maybe we can make it work if I increase my signature drink ingredients. And it was just train wreck from then on. Like mentally it was, oh my God, everything's going wrong. And it was just a fight through to the end. And I finished on time, but coffees were not where they need to be.
It's that 10 seconds over, I think.
I ran one of my shots as 37 seconds when it should have been like 22. Yeah. And it was about as bad. I've never done anything that off, anywhere near close to that off before.
But you also what I can remember felt that the routine you've done at a time, it's not something that you felt deep down that this is what I want to do as well.
I definitely had some attachments to some of what it was. Like, I mean, it was amazing working with Elkin Guzman and all this stuff. I was so interested, but maybe the way of presenting and maybe like what I said, maybe, yeah, it was hard to find the really strong, like, what do I say coming into signature drink? And, you're kind of changing it all the time and going, oh, it's not quite right. And it didn't feel quite right. And we're in Dublin doing final preparations and still changing whole sections of speech because it's like, it just doesn't feel right. I can't present this right.
Yeah, it was a little bit kind of maybe
Forced.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But at least that was a great learning as well, as you kind of done it throughout your 7+ years of competition. That was the one thing that you can take away from, doing something that you feel it's a lot more natural for you and not forcing it, as well as control with the shots. But I feel like 2017 you won Australian again, and we've included Hire to help us with the campaign as well and to be part of this. So we had a big team. There was actually huge team.
Too many people.
Too many people. But yeah, let's talk about a little bit about the team. Like, in your opinion, who should be there to help you, to support you, and how many people, and ideally, how it should work out.
Yeah, we had a huge cohort, and it really ended up a bit chaotic because when you have people who are connected to it and they know what's going on and all of these things, they're in control of their section and they're part of it. And when you have all these people, it's like, oh, I'm going to do this, that person's going to do that, oh, they're going to polish, and it gets a bit who's doing what's going on. It ends up things are running different directions all over the place, and it ends up a bit crazy.
And when you're thinking about so many moving parts with so many people everywhere,
and you're also focusing on what you're doing, it ends up a little too much.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know for your campaign, it was me, John, Hide, Sam, and you. It was like 5. But then really backstage, it was Hide, me, and you. And Sam would come in for some tasting and then kind of be there for certain periods, but it was very like structured and everyone knew where they were, what they were doing.
And what they can say at a time and what to do. However, first round, I remember you finished number 1. Semi-finals, you finished number one. I remember that unbelievable espresso we've tasted in the semis. It brought a lot of deep discussions, maybe some tension between myself and Sam.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about the flavor profile, coffee? Tell us what you've done with that coffee.
Yeah.
And the crazy aromatics that caused some problems in the team.
Yeah.
So this was this year. Like I knew I'd worked with Jamison Savage with Morgan Estate for nationals. It's wash coffee and everything, but I know we've talked a lot about carbonic maceration. You'd use pulped coffee for your worlds, and we had a lot of these discussions, and I was like, man, the skin needs to. I discussed this with Elkin previously for the freezer process. Man, the skin, can we get the skin in the freezer? Like, I feel like with the natural process, you can get these colors, but then we can strip it off and wash it, and it just made sense.
So and that was that first one. I remember when we were in Panama together, like you one day we were, as we do, drinking wines, and you said, yeah, we need to have a skin zone. And the moment you mentioned it, of course.
We're driving back from Finca Deborah, and you and Jamison, you're both competitive, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, but I knew this was how we're going to get this. And Sam and I'm like, we're getting skins in these tanks. And it was like, yeah, but like it's expensive, and we've already done a pulped one, and it was great. And I was like, do we want to just do what we want to do and just stay where we are, and like it'll be really good and all that, or do we want to like change the world? Or do you want to like and then Sam's in your ear, and then you're like, Jamison, yeah, like come on, skins, and then and then we all got pumped up, and it was a big
was obviously first step. And yeah, a few months later, with that same coffee, we made only what 30 kilograms, if that.
Yeah, total. Sam used it for World Brewers Cup.
World Brewers finished number 2 in the world, and you use that. Yeah, obviously same coffee, different roast. But you spend a lot of time with that coffee roasting, crazy extractions. Like we remember, like from 13, 14 grams all the way to 22, 23. I think your extraction is very unique, very different. Love to talk a little bit more about that. Why did you end up with that recipe? You called frozen cups as well.
That was wild. We ended up, my recipe for Worlds was, I think it was 15.5 grams in the basket and about 50 out, 47 or 50 out. And this was like almost filter roast sort of thing, but slightly adjusted to bring us a little bit more roundness and a little bit more texture. And when that coffee's on, you have like 6, 7, 8 days after roast, that coffee is just like, it's insane. You in tasting, this happened actually twice. I think Pete Licata said once, he was like, who's wearing, and Charlotte Mullival, both were like, someone's wearing perfume. Sasha, you got angry at Sam because you thought Sam was wearing perfume, and it was like, nah, it's the coffee. This is, the coffee espresso down here was like aromatic, like floral, was like perfume. It was insane.
Yeah, I remember that day. Even though we knew that coffee very well and we've tasted it, it was always perfume-like, but you've obviously aged it to perfection for the semifinals. And I remember, Sam had a first sip, and then he gave me that same cup. Then I took the cup and I smelled this ridiculous perfume, and I just had to go at him. And Paul man is just looking at me, and I said, "Don't have a perfume." Of course you have. Like, this is a perfume. Like,
we're tasting. You can't.
You washed your hands with this soap that's just like, come on, Sam, you should know better. And I said, but no, it was no perfume. Yeah. And then a few hours later, like Charlotte had a taste in San Remo booth. We wanted her to taste the coffee, and she also said perfume, and that's when I said, "Oh, sorry, Sam, you are not wearing perfume."
Yeah, so we were doing a whole lot of opening the bag, laying it out on a tray for a period of time, and then putting it into tubes and freezing it on dry ice for each day fresh. And I think we had like 5 or 6 kilos total of that coffee for milk and espresso. And we were sort of just working it out with aging at the comp. First day was tasting amazing. Second day was just like, come on. It was just ridiculous. But I thought it was going to be, from what I tested, 9 days. So I used it at 8 days for semifinals, and that coffee was 100% ready. It was insane. And then for the final day, it was like, oh, so what do we do? Was it going to step up again? And we did a bit of open, close, and lay it out, and we just pushed it too far. And with that sort of style of espresso, we just lost that little bit of texture in the middle palate, which bound everything together. And then it went tannic and a bit sharp, and we just lost, it dropped down massively. And I looked inside the bag, and the valves inside the bag, which usually have a little bit of the what do you call it, the glue that sticks it to the inside. And those bags had a section of glue missing. So the valves were like disconnected. So that coffee had just been breathing extra oxygen the entire aging cycle. So when it was coming up to when I thought it was going to be, it had gone over the hill and collapsed. So for that style of espresso, which is longer out and everything, it just meant everything to it. So I got to final day and it was like, it's not where it needs to be, and I'm not prepared, and the dialing in of that sort of stuff, I didn't know how to navigate, and I got on stage and it was all just a big faucet, try to sell the dream, and didn't quite work out, unfortunately.
Yeah, it didn't quite work out, but yeah, as we mentioned, first round number 1, second round number 1, finals number 5, but you knew exactly. When it was announced, when you got your score sheets, you knew why, you knew what. Thankfully to that, I'm not gonna say failure, because every time when something doesn't happen right, you learn and you progress, and we all did as a team. Thankfully to that experience, we've decided to start freezing coffees at a time, and Matthew Lynn has sort of done a lot lot of work there to sort of champion that. And we've opened up on a Sydney, with having so many frozen coffees on our menu. And so I felt that was, quite a bit of revolution in a similar way to what you've done with the signature drink in Dublin, because you used your signature drink, your ice globe, where you put your ingredient upside down with the blueberry to sort of to take out the different distillates to sort of give us different concentration.
And Ben came up to me the next year and was like, "Hey man, I've done this with the milk."
I've done this with the milk. So it's pretty remarkable to see, like, even Dublin was not, great success story. Like, there was something that you've done that you've given to the industry. And at the end, of course, you made finals in Korea. It was an amazing experience. Not quite how you wanted or how we wanted, but that learning, went to number one on Americville. On Americville. And there's a lot of people now freezing coffee at time. So how does that make you feel?
It feels amazing. I mean, I think it took a long time to realize what that had done, but that campaign has made huge impact on what we do. I know you and Project Origin have gone crazy with so much of this whole cherry stuff, and it's now like all over the world you have whole cherry CM or anaerobic style coffees that are everywhere. And then the freezing of coffee, it's absolute, like, we have, what was it, 50 or 60% of our wholesale partners in Melbourne are freezing coffee. Not even just the honest shops. Like, it's huge.
And following year when Aga won, 2018, it was pretty much identical recipe. 3-day whole cherry CM, pulp, dry ferment, and off it goes. And that, was WBC winning coffee in 2018. So, So I'd love to talk a little bit what happened after Korea. You've concentrated, you put a lot of effort, almost 12 months of preparation for that competition, and maybe lost, kind of gone really deep as competitor, but maybe lost a little bit of balance at work and life and bits and pieces. How did that happen for you?
It's hard with that one to kind of look at myself for like, why haven't I done so well? And I mean, I was really happy with what I'd done in some ways. At the same time, I hadn't delivered quite what I wanted to. And it's kind of like you look at the bags and you go, oh, it's the bag's fault. And it was very hard to really, for me to look at myself. And it took me a long time to realize that it was me mentally again that held myself back in that final stage. And I was still a little bit kind of lost for a year. I was like, I'm going to take a year off competition, and supported Matthew Lewin to in his competition. And then I came back the year after and started focusing a lot on the fermentation sort of stuff. But I had my focus on what I wanted to do within that, and I wasn't completely settled in, what I do at Honor or with my job, or do I do like R&D stuff, or do I do this, or I don't know. I was a little bit lost in general, but I knew some of that fermentation stuff was interesting to me. But maybe some of my life is not as organized, and that affected me, how I prepared for competition and how I actually approached things. And I made some silly mistakes in the lead up to that national competition, with selection of coffees and like roasting styles and just the general approaches. If I look at myself then, I was running around in the circles. And then I got to competition, and the final day I was 4 different roast profiles, 2 different coffees, 2 different temperatures on my machine. And it was like, okay, well, I'm still not happy with my espresso. Changed to dry ice. Managed to come second to Matt. Matt had just this ridiculous 5s for espresso, 5s for milk, like ridiculous day. And for me, I just knew, Matt was in control. Matt knew what he wanted to do and what he wanted to serve. So I was so happy for him to win. And I kind of was sort of like, this is not my year. It's not what I'm meant to be doing. I spent a bit of time really rethinking what is my why with competition, and looking at myself as it's really, once your mind is in the right place and your work is in the right place, and you're putting energy in all the different areas, only when you're balanced across all of that sort of stuff are you going to achieve what you want to achieve.
So what are the things that you've changed?
So, I mean, I've had a lot of long conversations with you about like what I do at Honor and like really finding some clarity there. And I also went to Deidre Houston, who is incredible mentor, incredible sort of help with the mind coaching, and she worked with Janina Ferreira to win Australian Brewers Cup the first time she's competed, and she said, "Oh, it's amazing! Like we had an amazing time together, and I saw a lot of similarities in how her mind was previously working against her, and your subconscious mind is pushing you in the wrong direction, and you're making decisions that maybe aren't in your best interest." So I approached Deidre and we had a lot of chats, and I decided to jump in and just complete faith, do the mental sort of coaching with her. And this helped me realize that there's so many things that you do subconsciously that you don't even realize you're doing that are sabotaging yourself. And even though at the time I felt like everything that I was doing in competition was right, and some of it was, like the fermentation stuff we've carried on now, and it's now making impact. But my mind and mental state and the way I think and the way I guess give or expect in return and all these sorts of things, that all plays huge impact to how you progress. So I started seeing everything, I mean, less as an exchange, like I give and then you give me, like a bit more just doing things and whatever happens, happens. It's if it feels right, it's probably right. If it doesn't feel right, then you're probably going the wrong direction. And having that really strong understanding of like why you're doing something.
And we've noticed that change as well. Like Betty has been saying for a few years, we always, of course, loved Hugh Kelly. We know that deep down you're an amazing person. You're very humble, very giving person. But once you started looking at yourself, even kind of completely out, even though that work was done to help you with the competition, but most importantly, to help you as a person, to be happy with your life, to have a right balance. Betty, my wife, she noticed a lot of changes in you, and a lot of people in the company have noticed a lot of positive changes, because it's not about the exchange anymore. If Kelly, if you feel like you want to go out and help someone and support someone, I'll just do it without expecting anything back in a return as well. And being in control and having that balance when we do compete, we shouldn't be just slaving and just worrying about competition as well. There's competition, there's family or boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever that needs to be in a balance as well. There's work, like things should not stop. Which is something that we have experienced with Korea, because it was just competition.
It was too deep in one bubble.
Took a lot out of you, and obviously 2019, you've learned all of your lessons and everything. How did that campaign start? Eugenio's story, Lara, and all of these things.
Yeah, we started discussing again that, I mean, I'd spent a year doing competition, with Peter Williams, and that was amazing. And we actually worked together again for World Barista Champs this year. Yeah. He's an amazing part of team and such an amazing person to be around. And but I also knew that, with my understanding of where I'm at mentally as well, like you know me better than anybody, what I've been through and where I've come from and where I've ended up, and that we needed to work together as well. So we've discussed, working together again, and Pete working with us as well as part of the team. And we came up with a sort of way of working together that, it was pretty crazy to come back into this and then work out how we should work together. And so we tried Eugenio's 2015.
I'll kind of go back to this, because in 2017, when you competed in Korea, it was a big team, a lot of us, and really hard to control. Coffee was really important. Like that's something that we kind of, Sash presented a few ideas, but then end of the day, it's yours, it's your competition. And so why did you choose UG?
I tasted it, and I mean, I'd tasted it previously, and I didn't really have the perspective to understand what it was about that coffee that made sense for espresso, and I couldn't really look at the good in it and the bad in it and separate that. And then I tasted UG again this time, and it was like, that sweetness is crazy, but there's so much potential underneath all. I mean, there was a lot of weirdness in it as well. It was like, it was like seaweed. We had smoked meats. We had like hint of tropical peeking through sometime, but it was like green tea and a lot of tannins and no acid and like nuttiness and umami and
Sometimes a bit of soy.
yeah, it was very strange, but it was extremely intriguing, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of when we were doing 2017 preparations, and when you're going all the way through that, like trying all the different doses and roast profiles, and the negatives didn't seem like they were such an issue anymore. I kind of had changed the way I looked at coffee because I'd been through so much trying to make coffees work to exactly what I wanted them to do in previous years, and it was immediately like that can be worked with, and I was having trouble kind of trying to get that acidity up and trying to get flavor profile to where it needed to be, and we're getting really close to competition and regional competition, and it was one of those, it's exciting, but at the same time it is very out there and very polarizing, and I had a lot of people look at me like, you're mental if you're going to use this, and I was tossing up between that, and we had this CM Kenyan coffee that's just like one of the best Arabica espressos I've ever tasted, and it was easy, and I made a sig drink in a day, and I was still kind of like, this way or that way. Well, this way is tasting.
That was the day before competition.
Yeah. So I made a sig drink. I made a routine, and I was like, you know what, this is gonna work. It will work. It was awesome espresso, but then it was also like, this thing over here is it's exciting at the same time, and I kind of learnt with Deidre as well. It's like, what makes your heart pump, and the outcome is going to be the outcome. Don't worry about that. What actually makes you excited? And we had some discussions, and you didn't even have to say anything.
Yeah, I remember. You called me. Oh, not. I don't think you called me.
You
actually.
called me and
I
just
called you
like have a
because
chat and how you going, and
because you were dialing coffee with Sam or Matt and a few other people, and you obviously at the time UG was potential. Was not great, was not polished, but deep down it was a potential, but with a lot of these negatives. And when you taste potential, and then you have this CM Canyon was just ridiculous. Then you, as you said, the work you done with the DJ, it comes down to mindset. Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Is it do you follow your heart or do you follow your head? If you're following your head, yeah, of course I'm going to use CM Canyon. Following morning, you were heading to Sydney for whatever reason. I could not go to Sydney with you, so it was sort of regional routine by yourself. And then I called you, and then what happened?
We had a chat, and it was one of those like, you don't even need to say anything, Sash. I think you were kind of like, you saw that I was a bit torn and everything, and you were like, you just go, how are you going? I was like, yeah, I'm using it. So I jumped in to use that at the regionals, and it was crazy. Used like a filter roast with it and the espresso roast, and layered 3.5 grams of the filter roast in a fine grind setting on top of the coarser grind setting to try and bring a bit of extra acidity cut to offset the tannins, and still had a little bit of tannins, but we actually got it tasting pretty good on Sydney water.
And everything changed from that day, right?
Yeah.
You're in your mind, you go, I believe in this. And not only you believe in UG, like it kind of opened up your mind, well, there's so many other species out there. And for me, like that was kind of the moment where Kelly found his super deep why.
Yeah.
and then from then onwards, you went to farm to actually fix these things.
Yeah, we went crazy. Like as soon as I did that competition, it was one of those. I was in a great place, and everything just was sort of working, and that was a very strange. One of those when you're in a certain place, you just get into flow, and things just happen. And I knew, okay, this is super exciting, but there's all these things in this coffee that I wanted to change, and we're going to go to nationals with this, but it needs to step up. And I got in contact with the Makalata farm and started having a chat with Fernando online, Fernando Oca. And we started talking about Yuji, and we got it was just a normal natural process coffee then. And we started discussing doing more controlled fermentations. And I mean, it was all the farmers like washed honeys and naturals and across the board. And we kind of tasted these coffees and across the board and kind of had, really good things and not so good things. And it was like there's so much here that can change. So we talked online for a while about, okay, we need you to get these tanks and we need you to get, so I'm going to come over and visit and we're going to do some work together. So I had a bunch of frequent flyer points saved up and I bought myself a ticket to Colombia and was like, I'm going, I don't care what happens, this is just happening. So the guys were awesome to organize everything that we asked for, and I went over and I had these cultures that I'd started talking with Christian Hansen's a big culture company. They're doing incredible stuff in the wine industry and in food production and all this sort of stuff. And I'd made this connection with a guy, Carlo Mason, in Australia. He's obsessive freak about fermentation as well. And we got on really well. 3-hour conversation in one of our cafes one day on our first meeting about fermentation potential and everything. So we had all these different new cultures that they're working on and a whole lot of theories that made sense to me. And theoretically, we're going to solve these problems. So
what problems?
The
veggie notes,
veggie and the savory and bring out more fruit and clean up the aftertaste and So I just had this feeling that it was going to work. And I flew over and I met with Fernando and we spent a full week at the farm working on everything from sorting after picking to like how much goes in tank, like temperatures, every single detail. And the first tank that we opened with the culture was 2 days. I had no idea how long it needed, whether maybe the culture kicks it off faster and whatever. First tank we opened up and it smelled like bubble gum and like tropical fruit, and it was just like, what the hell is this? And none of us had smelt anything like it. And it was pretty clear straight away that this coffee was going to be different. And then they only had one more batch, so we could only do 2 tanks, really. So we were kind of strategizing a lot based on that, and we'd done work with the other coffees as well around it, and sort of learnt some tendencies, and then it was like, no, this needs to go further. So we chose 6 days for that coffee, and I didn't get to taste it until 3 months later, and the first one still had a little bit of the green tea, but it was so much cleaner and there was a lot less savory stuff. Still not quite enough acidity. But then the 6th day came and it was just like, I've never tasted anything in my entire life like this. It had the acidity of like Riesling, like German top level GG Riesling that sparkles and tingles, and there was no savory. It was just pure tropical. Like Sam came and roasted that first batch, and he came into the WBC room and we pulled this espresso. The whole room smelt of tropical fruit, and we've just taken a sip and Sam's like, I think it's no, it's clean, because the flavor was just so intense.
So big,
And I've just started laughing and like literally crying and laughing, and Sam's laughing and we're high-fiving and we're running around and high-fiving everyone. And yeah, that was the moment that we realized that Yuji is not weird and it's not strange. UG is the most incredible coffee I'd ever tasted at that time.